Hey, what's up, y'all? Y'all know my slogan. I don't know it all, but I know what I've been through. Now, before we get into this video, please make sure you head on down to Instagram and follow us on our official Instagram page at Hookah Anonymous _. We're able to be a little more explicit, a little more uncensored, and share content freely without running the risk of having our channel terminated. So, once again, make sure you head on down to Instagram and follow us on our official Instagram page at Hookah Anonymous _. We're almost at 100,000 subscribers, so if you like this video, make sure you subscribe and hit that bell so you're notified every time we drop new content. Now let's get into what you guys came here to see. Now, it looks like Trenches News is doing what Trenches News does best, right? He's trying to spin the narrative, and hey, if it works for him, then it works for him. I can't blame him for trying to swindle his way out the system or the situation that he has at hand. Now, I see the guys that was closest to him, who he was shouting out in the beginning of every video, is also into it with him right now, so he's just going through it. And let's make this very clear, y'all. Please don't think that we're just doing a bunch of videos dedicated to Trenches News and trying to bash him and, due to the current situation at hand. We're covering the FBG Duck trial, and it just so happens that he is a part of the case, being that he is a star witness who they say have been working with the government for decades. So it's like one big Pandora's box, and unfortunately he's a part of it. And unfortunately, every time we're informed about a court date or something that happens, we have to update y'all on what's going on. So once again, it's not that we're trying to bash him or kick him while he's down. However, he is a part of this case. It is what it is. Now, as y'all know, Trenches News' first time appearing in court was last week, and it kicked this week off on Monday, December 4th, 2023. He was cross-examined for the first time, and a lot of bombs have been dropped about this case. They're talking about events that happened back in 2008, 2006, 2011, all type of things, and more names are being included, and it's been exposed that Trenches even allegedly cooperated against a corrupt police sergeant by the name of Ronald Watts. Now, if y'all remember in the previous video, I've asked about how Trenches even became a government informant, how did it start, and why was he chosen out of everybody to pretty much cooperate. Now, it looks like during cross-examination, everything was revealed, so I want to speak on it and hear what you guys got to say. I know it happened about 2 days ago, but I got overwhelmed, and once I seen all the new details that transpired during this court date, I had to speak on it. So we're going to get into what the article says and point out a few key things. In the meantime, make sure you subscribe and hit that thumbs up button so we can get this video in the algorithm and bring awareness to everything going on within this FBG Duck trial in hopes that he get the proper justice. So let's start where Trenches News explains how and why he became a government informant decades ago, because from my observation, the feds have made it clear that Trenches News have been cooperating on crime going on in the street and within O Block for a decade. But from the article, Trenches is insinuating that that's not exactly how it went. In fact, he did become an informant. However, it didn't start with him telling on anybody from the streets. In fact, it started with him cooperating against a corrupt police officer by the name of Sergeant Watts, and that's how everything began when it came to cooperating. Now, I would also like to point out that the article clearly explains Trenches' testimony is being, quote, dizzying, as they would say, quote. The bombshell statement came during Martell Wiley's second day of dizzying testimony at the Dirkskin Federal Courthouse, where he sparred with defense attorneys who noted there was no evidence he had actually cooperated against Watts. Now let me break this down by what they mean by dizzying and what they mean by no evidence they actually had that he cooperated against Watts. And now to explain what I meant earlier by Trenches News doing what Trenches News does in the courtroom, trying to spin the narratives. Now, they already noted that he had conflicting stories. They already noted that he's been uncooperative in some points of this case, and he's been accused of not being credible during this process in some instances. So when they say dizzying testimony, it pretty much means that Trenches News is being all over the place. Now, I don't know if this is his way of trying to finesse or his way of trying to still keep some type of street cred and act like he didn't fully testify. I don't know. What I do know is no matter what he does at this point, the damage is already done. But anyway, article states that Trenches News began working with law enforcement all the way back in 2006 when he was arrested by Sergeant Watts. But here's a twist. Trenches didn't start his cooperating career by telling on anyone in the street, as he says, as he would start off by cooperating against a police officer at the time who happened to be corrupt and wrongfully charged young black men from the Ida B. Wells complex who didn't comply with his corrupted ways. Reports say that he extorted drug dealers for money in the area, and when the dealers would refuse to give up any money, that's when Watts would arrest him and put them in jail, abusing his authority as an officer. For his actions, him along with his partner, Officer Khalid Muhammad, was sentenced to 22 months in federal prison back in 2013. His arrest resulted in 87 people being exonerated due to being wrongfully arrested, and over 200 convictions having to be thrown out by Cook County prosecutors due to his corruption of extorting money from drug dealers and falsely arresting who didn't comply. Now, if you're asking, where does Trench's News come in all this? Well, here's the mix-up. Martell Wiley, aka Trench's News, is claiming that back in 2006, he was caught up in the corrupted scheme of Watts and claims that he would be wrongfully arrested in 2006, as Trench's would say, quote, "He asked me, did I want to go to jail or did I want my money? I said I'll go to jail. He took me to jail. I got up with the feds as soon as I got out." Which means that Trench's is trying to insinuate that yes, he cooperated for decades, but it's only considered that because he cooperated against an officer and no one from the street at first. So I'm assuming he thinks that that'll take the heat off him so people don't think he was in fact snitching, but instead he was wrongfully arrested. So he did tell, but he told on a police officer who was being corrupted against him. That'll probably excuse his cooperating, right? But no. Here's the twist, and here's where the swipe name of his will play a part. Because although Trench's have alleged that he was caught in the corruption of Sergeant Ronald Watts and was wrongfully arrested, defense attorneys would state that there's no Cook County records or evidence showing that he was charged for any crime back in 2006. In fact, U.S. Assistant Attorney Jason Julian will also make it clear that prosecutors had no corresponding FBI records from that year, pretty much stating that Trench's News is lying yet once again. So the real question once again becomes, who did Trench's begin telling on and why? Because he's saying that it started with him going to the feds about Sergeant Watts and his scheme, but the courts themselves, attorneys and all, are saying that there's no record. So how do you dispute that? How do you dispute against, these attorneys? How are you going to lie to the people that know pretty much everything, and they could look up anything they want? And the assistant attorney is saying they have no record of him going to the feds as well in the year of 2006. So what's really going on? Now, I don't know if this is part of Trench's News plan or scheme and trying to finesse the system to tell him anything in hopes of not making anything he say credible. But if he keeps this up, he's going to earn himself a perjury charge or something. Now, on the flip side, the assistant attorney did lean towards Trench's News side a little bit when he would make it clear that as a crooked cop, he wouldn't be surprised if Sergeant Watts didn't properly record the arrest, hinting that maybe he did arrest Swipe but didn't log everything in the proper way as an actual cop would or should. So it's on the fence because that is a good point as well. But from my understanding, once you're in jail, period, they must have some type of record in it, whether it's, you getting booked, you leaving, something. Whether it's your fingerprints, I know nowadays they take your retinas, pictures of your tattoos, something, mugshots, something, I don't know. Now, if you just in there for foolishness and they end up letting you get out through the back door or because they know that they messed up on their end some way, somehow, because it does happen, I understand that. But at least you had to go through the process first of getting your fingerprints or a mugshot, then they let you go. So I don't know, but they're saying they have no record of him in there if he was in fact arrested, but it says a lot about the officers in the Cook County Jail as a whole. But moving on, during Trench's News cross-examination, one thing he did admit to was that he did in fact voluntarily reach out to law enforcement hours, right? Pay attention, hours after FBG Duck was killed. And I didn't mention this in the previous video, but one thing I find interesting that no one is paying attention to, or I see nobody bring up, is how did Trench's know who did it to be able to snitch hours after Duck was killed? Right? Hours. Pay attention to that. Usually tips will come out during the investigation after news break, and as information is given to the public, people know what to look out for and then they draw their own conclusions from there. But if Trench's News didn't have no leads, no information, no nothing, how was he able to call the feds to volunteer information on a body just hours later? Some don't sound right. But I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. I brought that to y'all attention. Now y'all try to decipher that on your own. And like I said, I don't want to make no assumptions, so I'm going to leave it where it's at, but just something is just weird, right? So now during the cross-examination, Trenches will also suggest that he couldn't remember the money he was paid by the FBI, which totaled up to $25,000. If y'all remember, reports came out last week that in the span of about a year or so, Trenches was paid in a few installments for the information he offered, which totaled up to be a little over $25,000. Trenches would claim that his handler at the time may take account for that because he only received funds to relocate himself and the rest was used just to get around. I don't know if this is part of Trenches' finesse or a part of this scheme, but he would tell the courts that he was shot in the head back in 2004, and due to the wound affecting his memory to this day, he also can't remember working with the FBI in 2008 or 2011, despite attorneys showing clear documentation as proof that he did. And to add salt to injury, O-Block J Hood did an interview recently with Cam Capone News, and he says that he never recalls a time where he could remember Trenches News was shot by anybody in O-Block. Right? He says that O-Block is pretty small and anything that happens, everybody pretty much know who did what or at least what happened. So could this just be another one of Trenches News tricks or another story told by him to justify his other stories? Or maybe J Hood is lying, who knows? But if I had to decide between the two on who I think is lying, I would say Trenches. And that's the thing, once you lie once you get exposed for lying, it's hard to believe anything you say, man. Keep in mind, his name is Swiper that he spells with 2 P's. And he admits to being a thief happily, right? Faithfully. So I don't know about y'all, but they say once you're a liar, you're always a liar, and a liar usually becomes a thief. I can't trust neither one. Now, when referring to his finances as he was being examined by defense attorneys, Trenches would say that he earns money through different avenues, including the book he wrote, paid interviews, and his YouTube channel, which he admittedly told attorneys he sometimes make up clickbait for views. Now get this, he also admitted that he carried a firearm after attorneys showed the jury pictures of Trenches News, who is a convicted felon, holding up a firearm just days after he said he built his online brand on teaching kids not to possess weapons. But he do the same thing that he's teaching them not to do. And whatever picture they're referring to, I'm sure it's probably a screenshot of when Trenches News did an interview with DJ UTV and pulled out a weapon. Now even better, here's what Trenches News had to say after they exposed a picture of him with the firearm. He would say, quote, "That don't mean I'm going out there spraying people. That don't mean that I'm going out there playing God. Just because I'm a felon, I keep a weapon on me. Do you see the ish that's happening?" Now Trenches will also close out everything by saying, quote, "You're trying to bash me, but in the end, it's not going to help you." Now let me tell y'all this. You got guys who aren't convicted felons that wouldn't even do what he did. So why he feels so comfortable doing it during an interview where he knows he's being recorded and knows it's going to go out to hundreds of thousands of people? I don't know. DJ UTV has over 200,000 subscribers, and in fact, that same interview where he pulled out the firearm received over 360,000 views. Right? Y'all get the point. This is the first guy I know in history to commit a crime like possess a firearm knowingly on video while being a felon, goes in the courtroom and admits it, and then say he don't care. Let me tell y'all, for all of y'all that think stuff like this is actually real and happen in reality and can fly in real life, especially to the kids out there that's watching, don't try this at home. Y'all know, like they say in the movies, don't try this at home. Yeah, don't try that. If you want to keep your freedom, just don't try that, because that's not going to fly anywhere. In fact, that's the quickest way to land you in the cell. However, I'm assuming that the only reason they're allowing him to do that is because he got what we call cooperator immunity, and he knows it, right? He already admitting to shooting someone about 17 times and also went on DJ UTV and pulled out a firearm while he was a cooperator in this trial. But he knows they aren't going to do anything to him because he has cooperator immunity. And by these antics, it's almost like he's daring them to do something. I don't know. But like I said, there's no way you could be a convicted felon inside of a courtroom admitting to having a weapon, and they have pictures or videos and nothing happens to you. I don't know, that must be some certain type of privileges. And y'all remember when Trenches called himself taking the train and going to these different hoods? You know, if y'all pay attention, that means the whole time he was an informant. You know, like when you go back and cycle to what was going on, you start thinking like, yo, that's crazy. This is why he was doing that, because he knew he was protected, which means he wanted someone to do something. I'm telling you, the government tricky, because the minute somebody would have did something to him, guess what? You arrested. Why? Because he's a government informant. And nobody knows he's undercover, but they watching him. If you're an informant, they watching. But anyway, here's what it seemed like he's doing, man. There's no doubt that he told, but at this point, he's either doing one or two things. He's trying to finesse the FBI by tainting his own credibility in hopes of them not being able to use his testimony against O-Block. So maybe in the future he could say he finessed him, or he's not a snitch because they didn't use his testimony. Same thing people try to do with Gunner's case, right? Just because he didn't testify publicly don't mean he didn't cooperate, and sometimes they don't need your testimony because the damage is already done. Or Trenches is just simply trying to cover his own self in the situation and not look like a snitch. I don't know. Like I stated earlier, he's all over the place with his testimony. He's going back on things he told law enforcement, and if he's not careful, he might catch a perjury charge. They're already showing pictures of him with a weapon. I wonder if they'll consider charging him as well for that due to all the games he's playing. You know, who knows? But that's pretty much it, man. As more updates come, we'll continue to update you guys. I know this has been a long one, but I appreciate you rocking with us. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Hit that bell so you're notified every time we drop new content. And remember, as long as you keep on watching, I'm going to keep on dropping. I'm out.